Michael? So we're gonna call it. Wow, that's nice. I like that. I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff? Here. Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Edmond?
Present.
Mrs. Lynn? Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Present.
Mr. Bean?
Here.
Mr. Coffey?
Here.
Will we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I'm gonna skip some.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Forward, march.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge and thank the ROTC and their leadership for their tremendous job every time we have a board meeting. Just want to acknowledge that. We want to welcome everyone, all the visitors here today. Ms. Rico, do we have any person on the agenda to talk on any agenda item?
No, sir.
Thank you. So can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda A through D?
So moved.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff? Yes. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn? Yes. Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Now we turn it over to the hands of our superintendent for recognitions and awards.
Thank you. So tonight, if Principal Hallahan can come to the podium, we have some students to recognize.
What is that?
Good evening. We ask that all students and staff who are receiving board recognition tonight stay until all the recognitions are finished. At that time, the board will take a short recess so the members of the school board, the superintendent, and the assistant superintendents can meet and congratulate all of the award winners and their families. As you may recall, at the January Board of Education meeting, Dr. Gibson recognized the Joliet West seniors who were named Illinois State Scholars. And tonight, I'm proud to recognize the Joliet Central students who have achieved that same honor. The Illinois Student Assistant Commission gives state scholar designation annually to senior students who are in the top half of their graduating class and scored at or above the 95th percentile nationally on the ACT or SAT. So it's quite an accomplishment. Congratulations. Students, I will call each name, even if they're not here. We'll call everyone. If you are here, please come up on this side over here to my right and walk up here onto the stair. I was told the other way. What's that? Thank you, Miss Rico. You know, just throw me off there. So we're going to come in on the right here, my right here, and come across and stay up there for a quick picture. And then at that time, families, you're welcome to come up and take pictures as well. Okay. Nicole Aguirre, Michelle Alvarez Martinez, Caroline Baltz, Joshua Beerley, Scarlett Chavez, Mayfer Cortez, Gabriel Dunn, Rachel Dunn, Ashley Espinoza, Esmeralda Esquivel Rodriguez, Ruben Franchini, Jared Galvan, Maria Hernandez, Carlos Manso, Jayla McCullum, Madison Madonna, Angelina Miranda, Victor Munoz, Noel O'Day, Octavio Ortiz, Cassandra Pena, Anahi Rodriguez, Sydney Sanko, Stephanie Cerna, Jacob Slattery, Jillian Turner, Amy Vollmer, and Joshua Walsh.
And then if you're shorter, just kind of up front. So you kind of scooch together and angle your body. There we go. And make sure you can see my face because that means you're in the picture. Okay, ready? One more.
And parents, you can move to come take a picture in a better place. We'll make sure they stay there. Move wherever you need to.
Stay there.
Yeah, wherever you want to move. I think we're headed right down the hill. No way.
Well, here, good this. I don't want to block anybody behind you. One more, then I'm good. Then I'm out. Then I can let somebody else in. I know, I don't want to. I just gotta get her hand out of the way. That's all.
Noel. Octavio. Cassandra. Anahi. Sydney. There, I'm wearing the mask. Gotcha. Jacob. William, Amy, Fatima, Joshua, anybody have good there? All right, thank you.
All right. Let's clap again, please. Come on, clap again. Let's congratulate them. We love this part of being able to celebrate our students and the excellence of what they achieved. And at this time, we're going to take a recess to get personal, to shake your hands. All right, we're going to just take a recess at this time. Yes, thank you, sir. I appreciate it because I don't know them.
Hi. Hi, thank you. Good.
Can I have a recess to get my coat, please?
You can do whatever you'd like.
You know, that's the truth, isn't it? I might. Let me do this. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna do this way. Okay, well, we're going to move on with the rest of our agenda. And at this time, we're going to turn it over to our superintendent for the superintendent report.
Thank you. Ooh, that is loud, so hopefully I won't yell too loud. So the first, I'm going to put correspondence and legislative update together. So as the board and our audience members most likely know, there's been a lawsuit, and there's currently a temporary restraining order for the districts that were named in the lawsuit regarding some mitigations with COVID. We were not a defendant in the lawsuit. We are following the lawsuit very, very closely. There is supposed to be a decision by the appellate court by February 17th, so we will be looking at that. I think it's also important to note that if given local control, we have been working on a plan with our center schools as well as our bargaining unit to ensure that we can move forward in a productive manner. Then lastly, it is also important to note that just today, JCAR, which is the Joint Committee for Administrative Rules, it's a legislative committee comprised, I believe, at about 11 individuals, and they also ruled today on not having masks. However, their ruling is not affect anything with the governor's current executive order. So we are watching everything very, very closely, and I will keep the board updated, but we're also working on potential plans if we are granted local control. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you. So the next item is the 10-day count, which Mrs. McDonald put together. And I will defer to Ms. McDonald to make a couple summarizing statements about the report.
Thank you. I'm submitting officially the 10-day count. So our count right now for the second semester, we are up 91 students in comparison to a year ago. So a year ago of January 2021. But if you compare our numbers from the beginning of the school year, so from fall to January, we are down 88 students. So we saw a decrease last school year because we were partially remote. And I think in regards to our enrollment numbers, they're starting to balance out for this semester. So if there are any questions, if not, Dr. Guzman, that is a brief summary of my report.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Next, we have the JTHS Human Resources Annual Hiring Update. So Mr. Chris Olson will be providing this update, and just any of our audience members, this update is tied to Strategy 6 of our strategic plan, and though this portion of the plan is operationalized, this is an annual update that is provided to the Board of Education. Thank you.
Test. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, everyone. I was telling Dr. Guzman, it's the first time I think that I've done this presentation that I had a huge mental block. So I reflected with myself, and I think I came to the conclusion that I was having a mental block because this is the last time I'm going to do this. And we've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. In fact, I was thinking even on the way here of all the things that I've been involved in as athletic director and human resources director, including the field houses, the turf fields, the tracks, the splitting of the two sports programs. I would have to say that the splitting of the two sports programs and this getting our hiring practices in order are the two most significant things that I've been a part of since I've been here. And that's due to equity. The two sports programs brought equity to our students, and the hiring practices have brought equity to our staff and outside people, so that we have a fair process for everybody to have an equal and fair shot to get hired in this district. So I just wanted to say that before I got started. I am fortunate. I got sad about the presentation, but I got really happy that I got to do it here. Like, this is quite a place. I mean, I really miss it down here.
And I'm glad that this meeting got to be moved down here so that I could do this from here. So strategy 6, everybody's familiar with strategy 6. I always tell the staff when I'm training them, I think that might be my tattoo when I retire from JT here in June. It's something we're very proud of. It's something that is more than just hiring. I think if you read it, the hiring is just one component, the recruitment, the retention, and the promotion of individuals through our system is all important in our hiring practices. And the reason that all of that is important is because we want to put a diverse group of individuals in front of our students, because the research does show that that improves student learning. If you can have somebody up in front of you that looks like you, teaches you, it's a fact that learning is going to improve. It also is not only important for our students of color, but our white students to experience different cultural aspects as they move through the high school system. And like Dr. Guzman said, this is just the way we do it now. Like, this is operationalized, and we are doing this every year. So every year we do hiring practice training for administrators. We do this in March at our district leadership team meeting. This year alone, and everybody knows COVID brought some bad things to us, but it also made us grow in many ways. I know our office alone, Dr. Hampton and I, we had to fast track with all electronic, and we actually had to do that in hiring too. In fact, the first hire, Zoom hire, was Assistant Superintendent McDonald. We had to throw it together. We had 15 people. I think Ms. Stiff was on that committee. 15 people on the committee for our first Zoom interviews. We didn't know what we were doing. We put everybody together, put our heads together to try to get this done, and it was very successful. And we continue to do that even into the hiring of this year's teachers and administrators. And I think we hired over 40 people through Zoom, and it's quite an accomplishment, really, to be able to pull that off. So very proud of that also. So during that meeting in March, we review our practices and policies, and then we announce our team leaders for hiring. We put the teams together. We want to make sure we don't spread we'll also start to pick our teams. We want to make sure we don't spread people too thin. So that's when we do that for hiring for the upcoming 2022-2023 school year. Currently, because you know of the shortage of teachers in some specific areas, we have kind of fast-tracked some of it. We know we're going to have some gaps in industrial technology and math, so we've actually posted some of those positions, and we're trying to get aggressive in hiring so that we can go out and get people before other people do. I think one thing in the future that I think should really be looked at is that, and I've talked to Dr. Guzman about that. We want to get out in front of people, and every time I go to a teacher fair, they say that, the candidates say that to me, like, we know Joliet's aggressive in their hiring, so we'll be looking in March for all of their postings, so that we like to have everybody hired by May, if possible. It doesn't always happen. We usually have a few stragglers in June and July, but if we can get people in place by May, that's reassuring for them and reassuring for us as we move forward. We've trained over probably 200 teachers, and we've also started to include paras, clerical, and other union groups into our certified hiring training. It's been great. They go through different things and we teach them how to, most importantly, I think the most important thing we teach them is about confidentiality and not saying or writing something wrong on the interview questions or their notes, because all of this information can be FOIA'd. So we want to make sure that we're on the straight and narrow on that. So we do a lot of training with staff. I'm going to go through a little bit of our hiring data. I've got to keep up with myself here. So this is directly out of the school report card. This is actually the demographic breakdown of our staff. You have to remember, because there's going to be two different types of data you're going to see as I go through this. You're going to see the data for our entire staff, okay? So this is the data for our entire staff. This is our 88% white of our teaching staff, and then the state of Illinois is 82 to 83% white. So we're not, this is a problem across the state. In fact, it's a problem across the country, to be real about it. But I'm also going to show you data from our new hires only. So I just want to make that clear that there's two different sets of data here. So I'm going to move on. And you can realize that when you have 400 teachers and you're trying to make a dent in something, looking at your entire staff, can be kind of frustrating at times. It's going to take a while to get this where we need it to be, obviously. So the next slide, I just put this in here because I found it in an article. I thought it was very interesting. It's kind of what's trending, in fact. Basically, what this graph shows is that, you know, we've gone from 71% in 1987-88 white students across the country down to now about 47% of our students are white. You can see if you look at it, the teaching, 87% back then, now we're at 79 white. The teaching staff is not keeping up with the change in demographics of our students, and that's a little bit scary. One thing that I did notice though, the Latino Hispanic has made a nice increase in and you'll even see that in some of our data. So these slides, I just like to put these in here because it just gives kind of an overall picture, and I'll break it down in a couple other slides, but you can see on the left, those are the job fairs that we have attended. It got a little funky last year because of COVID. We did not attend any fairs in person. They used to be all in person. There were no virtual fairs. The virtual fairs have done a nice job of giving some different looks where you can actually keep some of the videos of kids, maybe and resumes of kids. That's been a nice thing, but I can tell you right now, there's nothing like meeting a student in person. And I feel like right now, either whether it's virtual or in person, we're having a very difficult time of getting students to attend these job fairs because they're not having trouble getting a job right now. I mean, it's pretty obvious with the teacher shortage. They're pretty much dictating where they want to go. Excuse me, sorry. On the right-hand side is the number of applicants we've had, and you're going to see that we've decreased. We actually had a little uptick this year. Number of applicants, that's relevant, right? It kind of depends on what positions you have open, because certain positions, like in IT, we're jumping up and down if we get 2 applicants. I'm going to be real about that. Like 2 applicants in an IT position, we're going, all right, we might get 1. So that's kind of on the right side. The applicants kind of depend on what subject areas you might have open. If you have a social studies position open, we're going to have a lot of applicants. Okay, if you have a math, probably not so much. So it kind of depends from year to year which positions that we have open. And then the chart in the middle kind of shows that is who was hired that year. That is not our overall teaching staff, and that's what I meant when I said that before. So that year, 1920, we hired 61% white, about 11% Latino Hispanic, and 22% Black. As we moved into 2021, you can see job fairs getting canceled, things going virtual, same type of thing that I was talking about. So here you can see almost 71% white, 20% Hispanic, and 6.5 or so % Black. You can see that also that sometimes it depends on what openings we have, that who's applying in different subject areas. So on the right-hand side last year, and I don't know if it was because of COVID or what, we didn't get very many applicants. And I think that was that way across the state because people were locked in, right? They didn't want to move. They were scared to move, scared to switch jobs, scared to apply for jobs. And also the schools were not opening up as many positions because of COVID. Oops, sorry. 2021, 2022, you can see on the left, all the fairs were virtual that year. We did about 5 of them. They were very good. The best one out of all of the fairs that I've ever been to since I've been an administrator was the one at HF, because we had a bunch of local kids. I think that the year before, I think I had 70 kids that I talked to. At a normal fair, even U of I, ISU, you may be lucky to talk to 25 or 30. We talked to like 70 at HF. HF does a great job of their platform for their job fair is they have the video platform where kids apply and then they put a video up and we're able to view those from February 1st until May, the end of May. So that's a great thing. You can see we had an uptick in applicants. And once again, we're doing a good job on the hiring, 67% white. And if you remember back to that demographic of our entire staff is about 88%. This is just a 6-year comparison. Like I said, it's data. You can see that we're trending in the right direction. We're below what we have at that 88% as we move into each year. But like I said, it's data. This is the most important slide in the entire presentation, in my opinion. This is the amount of applicants that we get and broken down by demographic. If you don't get the applicants, you're not going to be able to make a dent in who we're hiring. This is impressive, actually. 19, 20, 20, 21, and 21, 22, even though it's gone down a little bit. Years previously, before we started this, we were lucky to be getting 15% teachers of color applying to our positions. I think that says a lot for our school. It says a lot for what we're doing as a school in the areas of diversity, and it says a lot for the board to be able to project that out there that we really care about this. And I think that's why you're seeing an uptick in the amount of applicants that we're seeing, amount of applicants of color that we're seeing. Down on the bottom, I think it's important to note, there's a couple things important to note. About 10.6 choose not to respond because they do not have to respond by law what their race is. Okay, one other thing that I want to point out is that I am the only person in this district that can see this information. And the reason I need to see it is because of EEOC reporting, but our administrators don't see the race, okay? It's just me, and I report the data to Dr. Guzman and the board each year. So this is a promotions one. This slide was at, I don't know, probably 2018. Someone asked to get this one in there, so we did. And it's just kind of how our people that are employed, whether it's teachers moving into a promotion area, or maybe even a counselor or dean moving into an administrative position, or a teacher moving into an administrative position. This is our people that have moved into what's perceived to be a promotion or an administrative position. I think this is an important slide also, and this came right from ISB. You can see that this is how many teaching openings are in the state by year. These are unfilled positions of teachers over the last 5 years. A little bit, it was continually going up, and then I don't know if it was COVID because there's not as many positions, but a little bit of improvement from in 21. This is across the country. I think Dr. Hampton sent out an article today to us that I can't even remember the exact number, but there's going to be like 350,000 teachers needed in the next decade. So it's crazy. I mean, we know we got a problem and we just got to figure out a way to address it. So teacher recruitment.
Mr. Olson, if I
Yes.
could just interrupt. I
where's it coming
think
from?
the reason that we see less in the state of Illinois for 2021 is because we actually have less students in the state of Illinois. And that's probably due to COVID, but there's less students overall in Illinois currently. And I think that's why we may have seen the drop from almost 2,000 to 1,700. But that number is still very high when you compare that to where we were at, in 2017. So it is a growing problem still.
Thank you. Teacher recruitment, about 2004, I believe, and most of the newer board members probably don't know this, but we actually made an effort to go to some historically Black, Hispanic, Latino serving institutions back in 2004. We were flying to, Grambling and places like that to try to recruit teachers. It wasn't working. I mean, it was the cost benefit of doing that. We weren't getting applicants, so we've tried to attack it in a different way, possibly emailing some of which I do, the dean of the College of Education or the teacher placement person at these universities, And I was talking to Dr. Hampton about this. They're having the same problems that, you know, secondary education and elementary education are having. Is they're transient. People are leaving positions. They're cutting positions. They don't have people to fill their position. So every year when I go to, you know, send that list that I have, I probably get 40 or 50 back, you know, that person's not working there anymore. They don't have an email anymore. So then I start digging at their website. A lot of them don't keep their websites up. So it's a struggle. We try to get as much advertising out there as we can through social media. And then one program that we have, and I know that we have a couple students that are now teaching in our school from the merit program at St. Francis. It's a great program. I actually have gone over, I hadn't done it the last 2 years, had gone over and talked to the kids and told them about our school and all of those kind of things. And it's really a good program. And we're starting to see some of our kids come back and teach in our buildings, which we really want. And then making connections with colleagues, that's always a bonus when we have somebody coming from another district and then they steal a couple more people. I actually love stealing Plainfield people because that's where I was before. So the recruitment for this year, you can see it's a mixed bag. We've actually done a couple virtuals already. We did the South Suburban. It's thin. The candidates are thin, but there is hope, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing to kind of combat that, something that we've done way differently this year than we have done in the past. So we also have the partnership with the University of St. Francis, the Exploring the Teaching Profession class. And I did see what we just got from ISB. ISB is going to be dumping a lot of money into programs like, or the state is, the governor, the administration is going to be dumping a lot of money into programs like what we already have. One of their goals, they're going to, that just came out today, the amount of money that they're going to be spending trying to do programs like this to get some of the high school kids really, and I believe they even called it a career pathway toward the teaching profession and toward getting certified in teaching and getting their professional educator license. So that's great news too.
And then if I could just add to that, we actually already have a educator pathway grant that we have been working on in our career and technical education area. So that is something we will continue to work on. It has come with training opportunities and partnership, and one of our largest and best partners right now is the University of St. Francis with allowing for this dual credit class. But one of the things that we're going to be focused on is how do we get, and we were actually discussing this morning with the curriculum directors, how do we identify students early on to ensure that they're aware of the pathway, and then understand what a great profession teaching is and the merits of it. And so we were actually discussing that this morning and plan on continuing with this to be a focus.
And I wanted to talk about the last one just a little bit. Ms. McDonald and I, we work with our student teachers. We do a co-teaching model, which is awesome. I wish they would have had that when I was student teaching, because when I was student teaching, it was like, here you go. You got the class. I'm going down to the teacher's lounge to smoke or whatever they did. But now we're doing this co-teaching model, and it's great for the teachers. It's great for the student teachers, and it's great for us because we have a little mini training ground right in our own school for these student teachers. This year alone, ISU, we have 29 student teachers. And we were making a conscious effort to get as many student teachers placed as we can because of the shortage. And we talk to them about that every day is an interview for them. And we have some good ones, and we're going to be able to hire some. So that's something that we're very proud of. We're sticking with this model. I think we have great feedback from the student teachers and from the universities about the way that we're approaching the student teachers. And this year, student teachers can actually sub for pay, which is kind of an interesting thing too, which helps out our sub shortage also. Retention rates, this is straight out of the report card. You can see that we're above the amount of retention for our overall staff. This is our overall staff. As we move each year, we're kind of consistent. The state's consistent, so we're doing pretty good in that area. This is just the retention by race four-year trend that I believe Mr. Edmond asked me to put in there a couple years ago, and it's a great one to look at. You can see that we're a little bit below. This is a four-year trend. So this isn't our entire staff. This is what we've done with our new hires over the last 4 years. You can see of color down overall over the last 4 years, about 79%. White is about 85. And then Ms. Stiff asked me to put this one in, and I think we could probably eventually break this one down even more. This is our classified staff. This is where we're at demographically right now with all of our other areas: cafeteria, parapros, security, transportation, office staff, anybody that is not certified. So you can see the demographic is a little bit different than the certified staff. I always put this slide in because it just really speaks to what we're trying to do here. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I think it is exactly what we believe. It's exactly from the top down what the board believes, all the way down through our teachers and our students and our families. So I don't know how old this is, but I know I've had it on there for at least 3 or 4 years, and I just think it's important to have it at the end of the presentation. So I'll take any questions that you guys have. You all have.
Why are we not going there? I have not seen those two universities on our list.
Yeah, I don't know if they have a fair. Chicago State, we used to go to, and I know that they canceled that a couple years ago because they were having all of their financial problems. And I don't know if Governor State has one, to be honest. I can look into that because that's, and we still would probably have time to get to that if they do have one. Not every university has one. It's hit and miss, like Eastern and Illinois split. 1 year it'll be at Eastern, not so good for us. The next year it'll be at Illinois, which is better. Some have canceled, some have not redone it because of COVID. Hopefully next year we're not doing all this and they're back to full strength. But that's a good question, and I will look into that. Thank you.
We did used to go to Chicago State because
We did,
I
yeah.
went to that fair as an administrator, and it was a really good fair, and I do think they stopped doing it. But something else that we can do is when we have our postings available, in the same way when we contact historically Black colleges in some areas, we could do the same thing with Governor State and with Chicago State to ensure that they can at least pass on the information to their education majors.
And we'll get a few student teachers from both of those once in a while, more from Governor State than Chicago State, but. Mm-hmm. I can try to pull up that data. Yeah, I'll look into that for the entire staff. Okay, yeah, that'll be some real digging, but I can work on that. Yeah. Sure.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I just wanted to say, Chris, great presentation. Thank you. Appreciate it. And congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. I want to thank all of you. You have a tough job, a very tough job. And I appreciate all of you. And this place is special. I truly believe it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Next, we have Dr. Hampton with his annual financial forecast for the district.
Good evening to everyone. So each year I present 5-year financial forecast plan to the Board of Education. Essentially, this is not a one-time preparation. What goes into this is really a year-round process. You all have heard from me in terms of the budget process in September, August and September. You hear the levy presentations, you hear the audit information, you hear staffing, you hear all of the other programs that we have in terms of grants and other opportunities. And this culminates all of that information, and also in terms of potentially forecasting what may have happened in the future based on that information and other conversations that occur either through the state or through the federal government. So the first slide is the budgeted revenues by source. The majority of our revenues are received through property taxes, which is a local base, 59%. The next highest is state and federal at 15%. Other revenue for state and flow through, which is special ed and or other local revenues. A key assumption that goes into this plan is our equalized assessed value. So that's our entire property base in regards to our district. And we've seen increases over the years versus decreases, as we saw back in 2012, 2013 during the housing crisis. Within our boundaries, in comparison to other areas and other districts, we continue to see a steady increase and or just a flat, steady assumption. So here within this assumption, we have a 5% increase in our equalized assessed value. Another key assumption is the new property growth. And for us, again, in our district, we have realized new property growth over the past 5 to 6 years. Even last year, our new property growth was over 70 million. So that's new businesses, new residential, but the majority of ours, the vast majority of ours are new businesses coming into the area, which has a profound impact on our revenue stream. And then another key assumption, and you always hear me talk about this during a levy process, is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. And the true Consumer Price Index for the year is 7%. However, because we're tax capped, we only can levy 5%. So that's what you see here for 2022 is the new CPI going into that will be presented in November and December. So it would be last year's extension plus CPI, which would be 5%. And then future, we have a historic preference there. And this CPI historically has been over a 10-year average, 2% to 2.1%. So you see 2% projected in this analysis. The other key assumptions of going into for revenues, evidence-based funding. We're tier 1, kept it flat for the next 5 years, although within the governor's budget, there is an additional $350 million for next school year. That budget hasn't passed yet, but that's what's in his budget. Transportation reimbursements, flat for all years. Other state, federal funding, flat, because again, we're still in uncertain times financially, and so we want to continue to be conservative with that. Also in projections, you see the ESSER, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, and the American Rescue Plan. And in these projections, really 2023 and 2024, you'll see that dropped off because we have to spend those grants by 2023 and 2024. And just a reminder, within those grants, we do have some salaries within those grants, interventions for students, programs for students. However, as we recommended this past year, once those drop off with the grants, we'll continue to support the staffing. So those are in these projections also. And then expenses, like every school district, the largest expenditures are your salaries and benefits. For us, it's 67%. That's about average. 65 to 70% is every school district's budget in regards to salaries and benefits. Those are the two highest in regards to those things. Then we have supplies and materials, purchase services, capital projects, and other projects. Other key expenditures, salary projections, subject to negotiations, so I'll pull that information out of our contracts. There is an increase of 7 FTE. That's information that Dr. Guzman has shared, and there'll be more information coming next month as we have recommendations for staffing. Future years are held flat. Again, we have quite a few positions in our ESSER and ARP grants, and that has allowed us to start and create those programs earlier than breaking it out over the next 3-4 years. So that's great for the districts and for us to have that opportunity. Retirement savings, health insurance, a 5% increase. That's below market, but for our district, we've done a great job within our insurance committee to keep our costs low. Dental insurance at 2%, and then all other expenditures are at 3%. Purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, other objects. And I kept it at 3% knowing that prices are high. Hopefully they start to balance out here as we move through the next few years. So on this page here, this is just an aggregate of the revenues to expenditures. And essentially this slide here reflects this slide here. And what you really see in this, and this is what you want to see, is you want to see this trend line going up. And this is just shows where our fund balances continue to increase. Doesn't mean that we're not spending money for programs and things such as that, because as you know, we've communicated a lot of those things. And as we continue to add staffing or projects, this changes as we continue to spend those dollars. And we see those dollars, it's kind of a delay, because what we do in our district and through our strategic plan is we make sure it's well thought out and they're programs that we can sustain over years versus just throwing something out there, doesn't work, and then we're starting all over, right? So they're well thought out in terms of these processes and programs, and you'll start to see these things fluctuate. So for instance, the transition building, right? That was a well thought out program through our strategic plan. Once those dollars became available, the building became available. We had an opportunity to purchase, renovate. Now that program is operating, right? So it's things like that that also affects this, not just the staffing. Another piece to this is as we move through, let's make sure I have the right slide here, is the overall aggregate projections, which is here. And at the bottom, you see the number of months we have in terms of fund balance. And you're seeing that number increase, which reflects to the graph. That's important too, because as a district, state, it was required 3 to 6 months to have a good 3 to 6 month fund balance in case, things happen. Of course, the pandemic hit and that kind of changed everything upside down. And then you can have more than 6 months, right? Because you just don't know for a rainy day what happens. But that's a good thing to see in terms of trend where those numbers are increasing and it's stable, right? And as we learn more about what may happen in the future, So there's the property tax freeze and reimbursements that's always out there. The EBF funding, will they continue to maintain at that level? And then there's always information or amendments or proposals around pension cost shifts. So we always have those out there because the three of these will impact our district tremendously. So we follow that legislation very closely. As we hear different legislative type proposals that's out there, we start to make assumptions to see how that would impact our district. And I will tell you, when you really start to talk about pension cost shifts, property tax freezes, pension cost shifts for sure. There's conversation to move 10% pension cost shifts to district, whether that's 1 year, 1% each year over the next 10 years or 2% over the next 5 years. This pension cost shift will be significant on districts to the point where if this happens, it's going to bankrupt some districts without support, right? So, and they know this, legislators know this, they run numbers, all these types of things. Property tax freeze, just depending on what's proposed, we know that if property tax freeze occurs, we lose that levying power infinite, right? Because you can't go back and get those dollars. Although the ideal base of the evidence-based funding was the more we start to receive from the state, the less we'll receive from the local. So we might start to see some legislations, if they continue with the evidence-based funding, is to then have some type of lower levy process or abatement where it lowers the tax base for the local. So those are things that we watch as we move forward. But the great news is that this trend line is going up for us. Many districts are not seeing this, so we're unique. The majority of times when I talk to my colleagues, you know, it's, wow, you know, y'all are in a great position because we're not seeing these types of things. And that's a testament to just the viability of what's happening here in the Joliet area. As we receive more information, as we receive new information, this will be updated and presented to the Board of Education. Any questions?
I have a question, Dr. Hampton. You got a provision for contingencies of 3%. Do you know what that historically has been? Have we dipped into that or?
Well, yeah, I mean, so when we talk about the 3%, that's really anything associated with our supplies, materials, our purchase services. And I think historically it's been somewhere between 2 and 4 because it just depends on what you're purchasing, right? And, you know, so like this year, we know that there's been delays in certain type of equipment, but we're not seeing the increased costs like we thought. It's been more delays. So it really just depends on what supply material equipment that is. So this is just kind of that rolling average of what we've seen historically. Within all of my budgets, I have contingencies built in for the unforeseen, because that does happen every year, you know, within our district, unforeseen conditions, unforeseen expenditures. So I have contingencies built in for those types of purposes in case, you know, gasoline goes up, right, or something like that. So I do build in contingencies also.
I just want to say that, again, Dr. Hampton, you do a fantastic job making sure that we're always able to answer right away, can we do this? I think with our presentations tonight, we know that we need to have the people to do things, but we also know we need to have the money to do things. And to go full circle back to when Mr. Olson was talking, you know, being in the district for 22 years, I remember when this building didn't have air conditioning and when we only had one sports program. And because of our strategic plan and because of the outstanding fiscal responsibility of the boards, as well as out of our business office, making sure that we're always ready to answer those questions and ready to do what we need to do that's best for students. So Dr. Hampton always makes sure we're in the best position. So I just want to say thank you. And every time you do this presentation, I learn more each year. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
As we move into our next three presentations, so part of we talked about hiring and where we're at with staffing. As Dr. Hampton and I believe Mr. Olson both said, next month, we're going to come to the board with our staffing recommendations so that we can continue on with our excellent academic programs and supports and things we already have in place. What we're looking at now is we're looking at what additional supports and programs can and should we put in place for next year based on our current needs. So our next three presentations are going to talk about what we're looking at doing, and then also some things that we'd like to put in place immediately to pilot for the rest of the year. So Mr. Markham's going to first talk about one goal, and then we'll break for questions, and then he has another presentation as well.
And this is Dr. Hampton's favorite kind of presentation because it costs us $0. So this is one that comes with his full approval. So I'll go through what one goal is, who they are, and then I'll kind of talk about how we ended up here. So one goal, you may or may not have heard of them. They're an organization that started in Chicago through CPS, trying to support their high schools and preparing students for post-secondary opportunities. And I know that's been a topic that you all have discussed in numerous meetings and something that in my work with our counseling team, we all talk about all the time, right? So one goal, their vision statement is up there, right? Their mission is essentially to close the degree divide. So it's about preparing all students for post-secondary opportunities, but they target working with school districts who have a majority of students of color, right? So how did we end up here? This is a partnership through the Illinois State Board of Education. They actually reached out to us to offer us the opportunity. The state board is using some of their ESSER funding to make the connection between one goal and school districts like ours who need some more support to help meet our students' needs in their post-secondary planning. So they reached out to us. There was an application process, so I went through that with Mrs. McDonald, Dr. Guzman.